Hello everyone, this is Syed Muhammad Osama Rizvi and welcome to the first ever episode of Monday Macro View. I am an energy and economic analyst with Primary Vision Network, and as the name of the show indicates, Monday Macro View, I'll basically be and mostly be talking about the bigger picture analysis, the macro indicators, because recently, let's just see what is happening around the world. The world has become highly complex, very dynamic, and it has become a little difficult to focus on every key detail. And I do these short posts on LinkedIn every Monday where I talk about the key events happening, about to happen in the next few weeks or days, or which just happened. Just try to make more sense of the world we're living in. So this show is an extension of that, and we thought, why not step it up a notch and share all those insights here as well. So I hope you'll enjoy it. So let's jump right into it. Amongst many themes, amongst many big picture themes, one of them is certainly climate. So climate is, I say that, and I hope that you would agree, climate is one of the most important policy issues right now in the world. Even for the developed countries, for the developing countries, the middle income countries, it affects everyone, however, in a different way. So this was a very interesting chart, I think. This appeared in The Guardian recently, and it talked about a report that said how the tipping points regarding climatic events are increasing every day. You can see these events here. Of course, glacier melting, unusual rainfall, and whatnot. And we are seeing this happening across the world. But what is interesting in this, and the point I want to make, is that most of the issues regarding climate is not confined to rainfall, is not confined to flooding, is not confined to loss of biodiversity. I've written about it recently for Primary Vision Network as an article that this is becoming what can be termed as a compounded climate crisis. What happens? Okay, so I'm from Pakistan, and recently I'm sure you would have read or heard about the biblical sized floods that we have experienced. And almost 15% of the whole population of Pakistan has been displaced. Millions have lost their houses, their whole life savings and whatnot. Crops have been destroyed. So what was initially only flood and related to climate, it has become a socio-economic cultural issue. Recently, IMF had a report out which said that Pakistan faces heightened risk of social unrest. And Mark has spoken a lot about this. He's written amazing article. We just had our food insecurity report out as well. Go check it out. It was last week. So we have been building up on this theme from quite a lot of time, that rising food prices, amongst other things, can cause social unrests. And this is actually, unfortunately, this is actually happening right now in real time. So, I mean, that is why I believe the issue of climate change, the issue of energy transitions, and we'll talk about it in the upcoming shows, and how the whole framing and narrative of energy transition needs to be changed, how it has created multiple issues. So there is a whole political economy to climate change as well. And I thought I should share it with you guys. On another note, and I think it is closely related to this one, right now, whatever news you read, it will either be related to recession or to a geopolitical risk. And I'm going to share my market sentiment tracker in the upcoming slides, and we'll discuss it in detail. But this was a very interesting chart. It was by Sentiment Trader on Twitter. I recommend you follow them. So this shows that institutional traders bought about 811 billion of put options in the last week. So a put option is something on which you only make money when the prices are falling. And this $8.1 billion, they represent a 3 times increase of what happened during 2008, the global financial crisis. So this is just to show you that this shows the collective mentality of the market, the collective sentiment. I mean, this shows that we are going to head towards a recession. It's not if, it is when. So this was a very interesting chart, and building up on that and highly related to it is another thing, the European energy crisis. I have this habit, and it's really interesting. If you just type an issue on Google and just click the news item, it gives you a good feeler of what the world is thinking about right now. So if you go and type energy crisis on Google, and these are some of the titles that would spring up. Margin calls of $1.5 trillion, Lehman warning for Europe, Lehman Brothers warning for energy world, and even The Economist covered an article talking about how to deal with Europe's energy crisis. The suggestions given were not really practical, but we get the point. So you can read that the increase in an average household spending across the developed world is unprecedented. And once again, the issues, the consequences are not just confined to that very region, let's say European continent. Once again, I'm going to give the example of Pakistan because we have been living through it. Because of the fact that there is a heightened LNG demand, Pakistan and other developing countries have not been able to source LNG. And we use LNG to make electricity, amongst other things. The power blackouts have gone up. We at one stage during the last 3 weeks, we faced power blackouts up to 16 hours a day, which was extraordinary. And mind you, this was in a mind-boggling heat wave with temperatures touching around 50 degrees Celsius. So the whole point, once again, we're talking about the bigger picture thing, the macro view, and you see how neatly all of these things, all of these developments, they tie together, and they present what Adam Tooze in his book Shutdown, and I quote that a lot, has termed it as a polycrisis. There are multiple crises happening at the same time: ideological, geopolitical, economic, political, economic, cultural, all sorts of crises. And that is why it is very important, I think, to highlight in the first show that the world right now is quite different from the previous few years, from the previous few decades, because the change, the metamorphosis, is outpacing the comprehension. So the change is more than what we can comprehend. And that is a very important point to think about. And it can be related to everything from trading, from climate, from policy making, for policymakers, and everything else. And to make sense of all of this, because clearly it's a lot to take, I devised something like this. It's not a very sophisticated system, but it gives you a decent overview of what to expect or how to make sense of the flurry of news item coming at you every day. So I called it the market sentiment tracker. On one hand, you have recession. On the other hand, you have geopolitical risks. So it's a continuum. I like to view the world in a non-binary way, but on a continuum. So things exist not on one side, not in ones and zeros, but somewhere along the line. And this chart shows the same thing. During the past week, Mark was kind enough to mention this in one of the shows. And at that time, both the sides were balanced. So the market was somewhat stable. But right now, as we have observed as well, there has been a sell-off in oil prices. Some of the energy prices have come down. Food prices have reduced a little bit, not very much from their peak. And you can see the recession bit populating here. There is the issue of margin calls. Russia has cut off the gas. It has also threatened to cut off all the energy supplies. The economic data from China was not really good, not really encouraging. Demand issues still remain because recessionary fears keep spiking up. We still have, after the Jackson Hole speech, we still know that the Fed is not going to pivot. And we also, by the way, did a whole show on that. And we know that we are looking forward for more interest rate hikes, and there will be a stronger dollar. And all of this, return of trade war, especially after Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. So all of this are feeding into the recessionary fears, which by now, as you can see, are very well founded. So what do we make out of it? The market outlook for me, for us, it's confused, it's volatile. Literally, even if you look at the headlines on Thursday, if you look on the headlines on Friday, it says oil prices fall on demand fears, then oil prices rise on supply fears. It's absolutely, funny to it's preposterous at times. So, but even if it is volatile, I believe there is a tilt toward a bear market. Most of these issues, for instance, Iranian deal, we know that it isn't happening, and if it doesn't, oil price is going to rise up. And one may ask, why have I put it in this end? Because although it might be bullish for this, but for the overall global economy and in the longer run, that is going to prove that can trigger a recession, clearly. Same goes for this. This can clearly spike energy prices across the world, but what is it going to do in the longer run? It is going to do, it's going to feed into the recessionary fears. So we're going to talk about this more in the coming days, and I intend to update this every fortnightly, but I believe this was a good way of looking at things. Finally, I thought, why not leave all of us, the audience and myself, something to think over. Market is very volatile. Oil prices have come into the news once again, wild swings happening. But I believe, and let me know in the comments if you agree, that oil prices will remain range bound in the coming days. 85 to 105, that's a huge range, but even if something drastic happens, I believe this range is going to hold. So that's all from my side today. I hope you really enjoyed the first show, and please let us know in the comments any improvements, any suggestions, any more topics you would like us to cover, and see you all next week. Thank you so much. Oh, okay.